experience. Although you tend to not see cliffs in tech, which is somewhat telling. So let's see if we can look into this a little further. StubHub and eBay Classifieds. Sure. Almost no auctioning anymore. Just fixed price sales. Interesting. Is eBay Classifieds Craigslist? Is that Craigslist? Has anyone ever done this? eBay Classifieds? This looks like Craigslist, right? It's like a sanitized Craigslist. Without the sex stuff. Alright, let's see here. I don't know, let's try classes and lessons. Kikiji? What is that? Kijiji? This looks just like Craigslist. Did Craigslist get spun off? I forget. They spent $2 billion on it, didn't they? Huh. I had no idea this existed. They're saying there was growth on an FX neutral basis, so that changes the picture quite a bit. Obviously, if they can grow, even for like 5 more years, still get fairly valued. StubHub offsets a little bit of the weakness. As does classifieds. Very interesting.
What I want to do is invite you all to welcome Devin Wenig, President and CEO of eBay. our first keynote of day 2. Devin, thanks for taking the time to join us. I know this is an incredibly busy time for eBay, and so we really appreciate that you could be here. This is obviously an interesting time to be holding this conference all together with everything that's going on here in the Valley. You're somebody who's been close to it for a long time. It'd be really great to get your perspective on where we are.
Yeah, first of all, Lee, thanks for having me.
Big PayPal shareholder.
I know it is, I'm sure there's a lot of questions about what's going on out there, and I don't have any answers. I guess what I'd say is there's an interesting perspective on the last couple of years, and I can really just comment on our sector, e-commerce. And what I'd say is there's some really great companies that are getting hit hard, but particularly in e-commerce, it is not hard with funding and with a balance sheet to show growth. It's very hard to grow value. And actually, I think to some extent, it hurts right now. It's hurt our stock. It's hurt everybody's stock. But what's happening is not the most unhealthy thing in the world. There are hundreds of businesses that have been formed in e-commerce in the last 3 years that I would argue are not businesses. And I think that it takes a cycle like this to clear out some of that to allow for real business. And, it's, for us, it's a painful process, but we've seen this in the internet before. There's been progressive cycles of riding up and down. And what I say is what usually happens in these cycles is stronger companies emerge even stronger. We saw that after 08, people declared at the end of the world, no one was going to survive. And it was actually Uber and Airbnb that came out of 08. Google got stronger. Companies with real businesses did much better when the tide went out. And I don't know if the tide's going out, but it feels a little bit like that. And if it is, I don't think it's the most unhealthy thing in the world.
That certainly makes sense. For eBay more specifically, though, you've gone through a lot of changes over the last year with separation from PayPal and the divestment of the enterprise business. For investors in the room that are sort of interested in starting with a blank slate, what is eBay now as a company, and what do you aspire to that be?
I think that what we are now, if we're honest, is a place where the world shops for great value and unique inventory. And our aspiration is to be the place where the world shops first for unique value and great deals, great unique inventory. If you step back to the last year when we went through this process of really changing the portfolio, we got a chance to look at eBay. eBay Inc. was a different company a year ago, most notably because the PayPal was part of eBay Inc. And what eBay, the business, was doing was very different. We were really, in many ways, spread a mile wide and an inch deep, and we were very focused on supporting pieces of the portfolio, including PayPal. You would have heard us 2 years ago talking a lot about focus on retail, be it all things to all people, e-commerce business, spin PayPal's flywheel. And in many ways, I think that worked. Obviously, we created a $40 billion business in PayPal, which is terrific. But when it became clear that PayPal was no longer going to be part of our portfolio, we took a long, hard look at what would be best for eBay. And my perspective was the last few years, and I got a view of what worked and what didn't. There were things that may have worked for PayPal that weren't necessarily working for eBay. And the first question we asked is, well, who is the eBay target customer? Why do, in a world where there are great choices, companies, there are great e-commerce alternatives, why do 160 million people still shop on eBay? And it's really clear that the shopping occasion is the world's greatest place to find unique inventory and incredible value. And with that firmly in mind, we decided that focusing ruthlessly on that and getting out of everything else was the way to create value for eBay. So the next decision was to sell eBay Enterprise and really double down on our core, and that's our core. So that's exactly what we've done.
Pay attention.
And, for us, e-commerce is less and less of a meaningful concept these days. It's commerce. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to buy an iPhone in e-commerce. They want to buy a phone or a laptop or a sweater. And e-commerce is just the way to do it. It's becoming a...
What do I need to buy other than a haircut?
So I view it as just a $14 trillion opportunity. And even though sometimes people connect the dots and say there's only going to be one company to win that $14 trillion, it probably is not going to play out that way. There's probably going to be a few, and eBay is going to be one of the most important businesses that dominate in the space that I mentioned, incredible value, unique inventory for the world shoppers. That's where we're going to be great.
And so when you look at that landscape of companies out there trying to address that $14 trillion opportunity, what's the path that eBay needs to take to get back to where you're growing share in that market, where you're growing with the overall market, whether it's e-commerce or just commerce in general?
Well, first of all, let's address that, and then we'll come back to how do we grow faster, because we certainly want to, and that's certainly part of our plan. I don't know what e-commerce growth rate really means anymore, and I'm not sure that's the right growth rate for us. It's easy to say we want to grow faster, of course we do. But again, back to the first point I made, in commerce, you can't talk about growth without margin. And there are two things that I say are relevant to our business. One is that eBay is a mashup of a consumer-to-consumer sold business, which has never grown at e-commerce growth rate. It's a very profitable business, but it's not a high-growth business. And that's about a third of our business. And the second thing is that for global scale businesses, we have by far the highest margin in our industry. And, we could grow faster now, but not create value. So I suspect that somewhere between our growth rate now and an e-commerce growth rate is the sort of efficient frontier of creating value, and that's what we're trying to get, somewhere around that. What do we have to do that? There's a couple of things, and I suspect we're going to get to that in the questions. But one of them, there are really three things that I'm focused on this year, and that is the inventory. eBay's been an open marketplace. We've sold all the world's things, all the world's people. Starting with the changes last year, we're now very focused on almost thinking like a merchandiser or a retailer. We've organized the company now in categories. I have people who wake up every morning thinking it's snowing in New York and we need snow shovels. And that seems very basic, but that's not something the company has done historically. Second thing is the platform. We're under a big technical evolution of our platform, and I suspect we'll come back with, so I won't touch on that now. And then the product experiences on top of it. I think you're going to see eBay's product experience evolve a lot this year. And it's on the back of the platform changes that we're making. The final thing that sort of sits over all of that is you're going to see us sharpen our brand and talk more about what eBay stands for. It's an interesting challenge. This is the world's number 38 brand. It's an incredibly powerful brand. But if we went out on the street and asked 1,000 people, 1,000 would know eBay, probably 900 would not know what eBay does. They would think that's auctions and used goods, even though that's a small minority of what we do these days. So that's a brand challenge, and it's one that I think we can close. But we'll start to close it once we get better evolution of our product, probably towards the back half of this year.
And so you touched on this when you referenced sort of the history with auctions, but you said GMV is 80% new, it's 80% fixed price, it's 60% free shipping. So clearly that's changed a lot from the auction days. How does eBay differentiate itself? When somebody is buying a new blender with free shipping at a fixed price, why are they buying it from eBay versus one of the other alternatives out there?
You know what's amazing is that lots of people have an opinion of eBay that haven't been on it in the last few years. And when I generally say, why don't you go and check that blender out, most times you will find a better price or a better set of choices on eBay than anywhere else. And I know there's people running right now, and I hope we have a good blender on eBay right now. Somebody's going to say you didn't have the blender, right? But that's the fact. And people don't realize that. I think that there are other companies that have grounded their value proposition in logistics. Our view of the world is you can't be bad at logistics. There's a threshold. If you don't get your stuff, nobody's going to shop with you. But if you're good enough, and then you have better choices, better prices, more versions, more variations, that's how we win, because that's authentic to who we are. So we sell a lot of those new blenders and Xboxes and iPhones. You know, people are stunned here. We have a multi-billion-dollar cell phone business. We have a multi-billion-dollar electronics business. We sell an incredible amount of car parts. All of them are new. And the question is why? Why is because average shipping times on eBay are now 3 days. That's not bad. And we have better choices. We simply have better choices than anybody else. And if you're willing to work through our complexity, which is the problem that we have to solve with the replatforming, you will often get a better shopping choice on eBay than anywhere else. Now, if I can solve the complexity, that's how you start to move the growth rate back.
Well, then maybe it's a good time to talk about that. How do you solve the complexity?
I think that some of the brilliance of eBay's model is also some of its greatest challenge. And the brilliance of it is it's been a friction-free open marketplace, which basically said to the world, you know, go sell whatever you want, and that includes businesses. And you can sell whatever you want, however you want. And it's been in this unstructured marketplace for its 20 years of existence. And really what that means, without getting into too much detail, is we have thousands of iPhones on eBay right now, and everybody that's selling the iPhone is probably explaining that iPhone slightly differently, even though they're exactly the same product. That creates friction, a frictionless environment, and it's created the amazing selection advantage that we have, 800 million items, which is bigger than anybody's marketplace. But it's complicated. And if you shop that today, our answer for everything historically has been search. It's been reducing all of that through search to show you search results, which is fine. We grew a big business that way, but particularly as the business moves to mobile, people's patience, consumers' patience for scrolling through thousands of search results is not very high. The huge change that we're making is moving from this unstructured world to a highly structured marketplace. And that is not something we've historically done. It's something we are doing now. It's not easy and it takes time. But in essence, what it does is it allows us to associate those 1,000 iPhones together and then collapse them into a set of best choices. So instead of showing you 1,000 phones for sale, here's the newest one, here's the best value, here's the best functional equipment, or whatever. That to me is authentic to who we are, great choices. But it pushes the simplicity curve way out, and that's the journey. That's the journey to growth.
You've done this with some parts of the business already. You're starting to see some results. Can you give us a sense of what that looks like so far with the benefit of that?
Yeah, I would. I encourage people to go look at what we're trying to be very transparent about what we're doing, and we're showing people what we're building along the way. We did that at our last earnings call. An example is the product pages. An example is you're now seeing simple things like product reviews show up on eBay. That's a question I get a lot. How come you've never had product reviews? We haven't had product reviews because we haven't really had products. And now that we do, you're starting to see really rich reviews showing up. You're starting to see us build structured pages. You're starting to see us merchandise better. These are really, what I say is they're needles and haystacks right now. They're very small, but we are a very data-driven business. And we don't do anything unless we measure it and unless it works. And so the things that we're building, the early indicator that I'm looking for, at the end of the day, there are only two metrics that matter in e-commerce, traffic and conversion. And the early indicator is conversion. When we build simplicity into the product, do we get better conversion? And somebody visiting eBay will simply find that they want to buy it. It's that simple. And we are seeing that. It's not yet moving any of our numbers. In fact,
all
the
proceeds
steps we're taking to transform eBay are marginally hurting our numbers right now, and they will for
$6 for
this year. But where the needles are in the haystacks, I like what I see, and that gives us confidence that as we scale that, we'll get benefits across the portfolio.
One of the other strategies we talked about on the seller side is more of a focus on smaller sellers, even individuals in some cases. How does eBay selection and ultimately the buyers benefit from that focus?
The amazing thing about eBay is the incredible amount of fragmentation that it aggregates on both the seller and the buyer side. We have 25 million sellers. The next biggest marketplace, putting China aside for a second, the next biggest global third-party marketplace has a couple of million. And that's in part consumers, but small businesses, really the core seller, our selling base. And, a large seller on eBay is a couple of $1 million. And that's out of the marketplace that's selling north of $80 billion. So this is not, we don't have any concentration of supply, nor do we have any concentration of demand, 160 million buyers. For us, what you can expect is that as we make this pivot out of big retail, down that tail, we haven't even scratched the surface of the richness of inventory. When you think about the world, where the world is moving, the fact that consumers now want to shop mobile and omnichannel. Think about every boutique and artisan store, small bookstore, and handmade crafter, and there are entrepreneurs. There are millions of entrepreneurs in the world, millions in the United States that don't have a digital presence. And the reality is that that's eBay. And I want to put, instead of putting 3 more huge retailers on to sell commodity goods where I don't compare well to my competitors, I want to put 1 million small businesses on and have an incredibly rich and diverse and unique set of inventory. So that when you shop, you always check eBay first, because why wouldn't we? We have better choices. That's where we're going.
You've been through a lot from a traffic perspective over the last couple of years. Can you give us a sense of how that has evolved, where customers come to eBay from, how you attract them, and how important sort of paid marketing starts to become in the evolving places around?
It's always been important to us. Let's start with the most important source of our traffic and customers is organic. It comes directly to our apps or to our website. And that's really the brand showing up. What you say, why is the brand valuable? How can I measure that? We measure it through direct traffic. People who don't have to come through a referral, they come directly to eBay, and that's because they know the eBay brand. And that's always been a significant majority and still is. However, a not insignificant minority comes through channels. So the channels historically have been dominated by search and other channels. That has been a challenge for us for many years, and in May of 14 it became an even bigger challenge. Google rolled out a whole set of new changes, and for us that hurt that minority of traffic that comes through that channel. There are 2 things that we are doing to make that traffic and new customer acquisition more robust and more, I'd say, less volatile. If you look at eBay's 20-year history, it's been very volatile. It's sort of a 2-year cycle of boom and bust. And I don't like that. It's hard to manage the business with that. So the first thing is we've got to diversify those sources of traffic. And the great news is there are great choices now that there weren't 5 years ago. Social being the most relevant. So we are really putting lots of oars in the water, and you'll see eBay now aggressively advertising and exploring different engagement models on Facebook and on Pinterest and on, you name it, 14 separate channels. For us, we need to scale that. We're one of the biggest digital advertisers in the world. So, we don't advertise unless we get the ROI, and we haven't yet been able to achieve ROI, so we can't move tons of money into those channels. But it's getting bigger every year. The second thing is search is always important. Google is always important. And a lot of what we're doing on persistent structured data that we talked about is really about building more stability into search. And just to make that real for people, why is that an issue? Without permanent place to put products, search engines love link equity, they love persistence. They're trying to find things that they think are important in the world, and they rank them higher. We have 800 million items for sale, 300 million of them disappear every 30 days. So to a search engine, that doesn't look very important when it's an iPhone and it's gone, and it's a this and it's gone. Now, having some persistence of product knowledge, we can put a permanent link into search engines and have the inventory move under that permanent link. This is the first time I'm able to do that. So some of that is it's slower to build, but we think that once we get there, it's a lot more robust in the face of changes that Google or anybody else may make over time.
Good to hear. The StubHub business has been accelerating the last couple of quarters. What's driving that, and where does StubHub put the bigger picture these days?
You know, we've grown StubHub a lot over the last few years, and you know, StubHub gives me some comfort that even though it may be a long road, you can re-platform an internet business, and you can turn its trajectory. It's obviously a lot smaller than eBay. We disclosed for the first time the numbers of about $3.6 billion.